my name is Sarah. I'm a small artist. And I'm definitely not wearing a wig right now. Hang on. Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm a small artist and I'm definitely not wearing a wig right now. This is Justice for Artists. Spotify has been known to underpay artists. This isn't some kind of secret scandal. It's widely known information. However, the awareness and the problem are very different things, especially when the awareness has no impact whatsoever. The CEO of Spotify sees no need to pay artists more than 0.003 cents up to 0.005. They said, you get less than half a penny. This business model is exclusively beneficial to bigger artists who get a lot of plays. If you're not a largely established artist, the model ends up being harmful. I'm covering this information because I would consider this silent discrimination as exploitative to small artists. Spotify knows that the music artists need to keep their songs on the platform in order to grow as a project and circulate those songs around so more people can find them. They take advantage of this. So where does Spotify get the money anyways? Their two top sources of income are from advertisements and/or subscription. Every member of the platform has to choose between those two expenses. This means the company is profiting off of every listener no matter what. I've had this sitting here and I just forgot to turn it on. So, being in the early phases of a professional music project is a lot more time consuming and expensive than you might think. The first instructions on their website for making a Spotify artist account is simply upload your music. Let's talk about how simple it really is. Okay. Can we stop making so much noise now? When I was living around the Dallas-Fort Worth area for several years, I was a freelance booking agent. This means for both venues and musicians, I was the one-stop shop to set up all the shows between them and also manage communication and social media. Yeah, I did a whole lot of work. I know. But venues and music projects could both come to me and commission shows. I did some promotion for the bands, like making flyers, making album art, posting videos and pictures of all their performances and all of the shows that I booked. Because of this background, I have hundreds of former clients that I could turn to for more information about first-hand experience as an artist on the platform. Now, this is a survey I sent to several of my clients with the general averages between all of them being presented right here. So the first prompt that I gave was for a general average duration of the writing process behind one song, which includes writing lyrics, instrumental parts, coming up with titles, and planning release dates. And the general consensus was that it takes months to years for one song. The approximate sum total cost of foundational equipment, instruments, mics, amps, strings, picks, interfaces, computers, etc. One thing that an artist brought up that I thought was a great point is how much gas is required to get to gigs and how expensive that gas is. But the responses that I got there were generally 7,000 or higher. Average hours of practice per week, the average was around 5. Sum of studio time commitment required for each person to work on and finish a singular song. In general, the responses were around 3 weeks, but there were some people who said several months. There were some people who said, I record everything by myself, so it takes a couple days. Now, recording everything by yourself isn't a super accessible option to everybody, but it would definitely save time. Average cost of recording at a studio for the necessary duration to finish one high-quality song plus mixing and mastering. Caleb from Citrus says, easily in the thousands. The space, the time slot, the equipment, AC, electric, all of these things add up. So having a sterile, reliable place to record is key to a musician's success. and the average cost of commissioning an artist for an album cover. Now, these responses were super mixed, but generally the response I got was maybe a couple $100s. Commission-based small visual artists are also generally underpaid despite all of the expensive materials and tools, designing, and time required to make a high-quality piece. Two professions that go hand in hand, yet can barely afford to support one another. I'm wishing that I had charged around $300 for my album art pieces, but I didn't do that. I showed in the beginning some examples of album art I created. I also asked several clients to film a short video delineating their experience working with Spotify and the low pay. We're about to take a look at some of these videos. I've edited each one so the artist's music is playing in the background. It has their Spotify artist tag, and it shows a compilation of videos of them performing. After the videos, we're gonna break down what they said a little bit to get deeper into the concepts. I'll talk about them more in depth. So without further ado.
How's it going? Caleb from Citrus here. I just wanted to go ahead and give my synopsis of everything that has been troublesome as far as getting on the platform on Spotify. So we went through DistroKid for pretty much all our releases. Citrus was formed in 2016, so we started pretty far back originally. Just the two members. When we were placed on the platform, we preferred that people go through like sites like Bandcamp, just because a lot of the proceeds go directly to the artist. But I understand that the compression, there's something slightly different about the Spotify and the Bandcamp. That aside, the way that artists are compensated on Spotify, their model is, completely bogus. And their CEOs telling people that content creation costs nothing, so they should actually pay artists less, makes absolutely no sense. Like, per 1,000 plays you get virtually nothing. So to make any money at all, I would have to be somewhere in the tens of millions of plays on specific songs, and that's just not realistic for every artist that's just starting out. It's just high time they wake up and understand this.
Oh, not a wig. One of the things that Caleb mentions in this video is DistroKid. So if you don't know what DistroKid is, I asked him to, in his own words, describe what it is. Let's take a look-see. My man goes. DistroKid is an online platform that can help license and distribute music on other platforms like Spotify/Apple Music for an annual fee. And then he said, sick. Another thing Caleb mentions is that sites like Bandcamp give a lot of the proceeds directly to the artist. He mentioned something about the compression being different depending on the streaming service that you're uploading to. As he says, the Spotify business model is completely bogus. I really love the word bogus. Content creation costs nothing. Come on. In the survey results, you can see how untrue that is. And I agree with him. That makes absolutely no sense. And he brings up a topic that I had already addressed, where for small artists, the business model just isn't practical. It's not beneficial.
My name is Jaden, and I'm in the bands 5 Point Palm, Exploding Heart Technique, and Midnight Session. And my experience with Spotify has just kind of been frustrating as an artist. One of the big things that a lot of people bring up when it comes to complaining about Spotify is how much artists get paid per stream. I believe it's like not even a full cent per stream, which is just kind of stupid. Like, I think Spotify owes it to artists, and especially since the niche market for artists today is a lot bigger, especially with how accessible it is to release music online. That doesn't mean it's easy to, but I just think like it has a very big market for that sort of thing now, more than ever, just with, Bandcamp artists and, smaller artists through the music community, especially in the online music community coming up. So I just feel like, Spotify owes it to artists a little bit more in that sense. And I myself have done a lot of work trying to, get on playlists with Spotify, trying to reach out to people that, would help me in that department, just promotion and stuff like that. And it's just not easy. Like, getting on a Spotify playlist may help a little bit, but it's definitely not as much as you'd hope, I feel like, as an artist. Because I feel like a lot of people say, like, oh, you gotta get on the playlist, you gotta get on a Spotify playlist, and that'll be what helps. And yeah, it does, but it's just not as much as I feel like it should. And another thing I think would benefit Spotify is maybe having a more specific place for niche artists, right? Like, it does some things well in like the, here's an artist that's similar to these artists, or you may also like this, right? But I feel like there needs to be a much bigger space for that sort of thing, especially with, as I was saying, how much more of a market there is for that today. And I actually read up about this a little while ago. The CEO of Spotify has openly complained about how the music industry doesn't expose niche artists as much, but bro, you're literally the CEO of Spotify. Do something about it. I don't know. I think it's just a bit weird. So yeah, I definitely don't like Spotify in a lot of regards, just in that area. There's just so many features, and they put money towards literally anything else but paying artists most of the time with here's more programs for this, or I think there was something for podcasts, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, podcasts, that's nice, but there's a bigger problem at hand here, and no dissing to podcasts, because podcasts are great, but yeah, I don't know. I think there's so much more that could be done with the money they have. I mean, where's all of the money they make going with how big of a platform they are, So, yeah.
One thing that Jaden mentioned was the expensive podcast investment that Spotify made. I found this article on the Wall Street Journal, so most of the information regarding this subject I found there. It's a little bit hard to find information on this subject because if you search the words Spotify and podcast, you're going to get a ton of other results. Essentially what happened was Spotify invested more than $1 billion in their podcast program that completely flopped. They spent $286 million on 2 studios for their podcasts and spent $250,000 on commissioning podcast episodes. The losses ended up being so bad that Spotify had to fire a bunch of employees in order to slow the losses. Not only is the money going to the wrong place, but now a bunch of people are out of jobs too. They spent more on their podcast program than any of their competitors, so they lost more from their podcast program than any of their competitors. He also mentions that releasing music is more accessible now than it's ever been, and this is because of platforms like DistroKid that allow people to get things licensed and on the platform. Also, he said Spotify owes it to artists, which, that should be a no-brainer. The platform wouldn't exist. The platform is made for artists. Getting on playlists was another thing that was mentioned, which is recommended as a huge way to grow your following. But that can only go so far. That only does so much. I like that he proposed a problem, but also solutions. Like saying there should be a bigger area on the platform to recommend niche artists. Just the fact that the CEO was like, oh, I wish this happened in the music industry. Well, it's not gonna happen if you don't do anything about it.
Hey, this is Joe from Hen and the Cox, lead singer. Just popping on here to talk about exploitation of local music and smaller musicians and little homegrown artists, especially regarding Spotify. I might go into talking about third-party booking companies as well. We're actually on our way to a show right now. But exploitation in the arts currently is running rampant. You already have issues with not getting paid enough as a musician, battling AI, and just favoritism, and a lot of that, of course, is left in the industry. But when it comes to exploitation, especially with Spotify and streaming services in general, the number of plays you get doesn't make you any money. We've got 2 albums up on Spotify. We've probably made 20 cents. And we've had our albums up for years. Our first one was recorded back in 2018, and then our second one was recorded during the pandemic, 2020, uploaded in 2021. And we haven't made any money from that sort of stuff. Additionally, with the algorithms that Spotify utilizes, the algorithms really promote those artists that are making Spotify the most money, of course. And so a lot of underground and smaller indie artists are being just kind of like crushed to the bottom and don't get a lot of recognition and are harder to find, which is not fair to really hardworking musicians who also have day jobs. I actually read recently that the CEO of Spotify told local musicians or instructed local musicians that they should be releasing new music and new material every 6 weeks at minimum, and even closer together if possible, which for a lot of musicians is not feasible because, once again, we have full-time jobs. A lot of us do just to make ends meet. A lot of us have multiple side hustles. Every 6 weeks is just not possible because recording is expensive. Even if you have your own studio, it still takes a lot of time, and you have to put a bunch of money in up front to create your home studio. On top of all that, on top of like Spotify and battling AI, which our friends the Infamous, they got the best beef award according to the Dallas Observer, because they had an album released that was AI generated and posted to their Spotify. It took months for their album to be taken down. So there's a lot of shit that we have to put up with as local musicians, and it's already hard enough being a local musician. It's our love for the art itself and the performance aspect and the amazing audiences. This is why we keep on doing what we do. But I'm not saying it's not hard, because it is. And then whenever it comes to venues and stuff like that, we have a lot more third-party booking agencies that are really gatekeeping a lot of our local venues now. And so now it's just making it harder for us to jump on shows and stuff like that. So hope this helps, and thanks for featuring me, and later. Peace.
So of course, common theme throughout all of these interviews is just artists talking about the low pay, which was going to be the main point of this video, but I didn't realize that it was a little bit more of a rabbit hole. She also brings up how these people are working jobs at the same time. You know, music doesn't make money super easy, obviously, as we've all been saying. And then I think it's so funny that she used that example of the Best Beef Award about people who released an AI-generated album. Yikes. Just don't do that. Third-party booking places, gatekeeping venues. That's actually something that I hadn't really given any thought to, but that would definitely make it so much harder to get gigs. Another thing that I really liked that she said was how it's about the art of it, the love of performing and the passion behind writing music. That's where the real fulfillment comes from. And you can't put a price on fulfillment. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments if you want to see a part 2. And remember to hit the sub bubble. Bye. I forgot to say one thing. Every 6 weeks is whack.